The Cleveland Browns just cannot help themselves. A franchise that spent 2 decades turning quarterbacks into cautionary tales may be doing it all over again. This time with Shedeur Sanders. In a surprisingly candid admission, Browns owner Jimmy Haslam recently distanced himself from the decision to draft him, saying it wasn't his call and that he simply respected the GM's choice. Translation: Haslam never really wanted Shedeur. And in the NFL, when the owner isn't fully behind a young quarterback, the writing is already on the wall. Now the buzz is louder than ever. Sanders could be traded, maybe even sooner rather than later. And if you believe the speculation, one name keeps surfacing: Jerry Jones. Dallas's billionaire showman, the guy who treats AT&T Stadium like it's Broadway, supposedly has his eye on Shedeur. Whispers say he sees not just a quarterback, but a brand, a legacy, a jersey that would fly off shelves in Texas. In other words, it's the NFL at its purest. A mix of power struggles, rumors, and open-air soap opera. The Browns burying a quarterback who sells tickets before he ever takes a snap. Fans chanting his name while he rides the sideline. And Jerry Jones lurking like a Wild West sheriff, hat tilted, ready to swoop in and play rescuer. Could Shedeur actually be traded away before Cleveland even gives him a real chance? Would Jerry go all in, even if it means moving past Dak Prescott? Or is this just another wild Cowboys fantasy? One thing's certain, the clock is ticking. And whether Sanders stays buried in Cleveland or gets rescued by a franchise built on spectacle, his future has already become one of the most dramatic storylines in football. The first sign that Shedeur Sanders' NFL journey might get messy came before he even set foot in Cleveland. Draft night was supposed to be a celebration, the moment a franchise embraces its future. Instead, Sanders' name became the headline for all the wrong reasons. Most analysts had Shedeur pegged as a top-tier prospect. He had the pedigree, the production, and let's be honest, the marketability that most rookie quarterbacks can only dream of. A Sanders in the NFL again? That's not just football, that's free advertising. Yet instead of hearing his name called early, Shedeur slid further and further. By the time Cleveland finally scooped him up, it wasn't in the first or even second round. It was late enough that the pick felt less like faith and more like obligation. Why? Reports suggest the Browns' front office was split. General Manager Andrew Berry pushed for Sanders, seeing him as a long-term franchise play. But head coach Kevin Stefanski? Reluctant. Owner Jimmy Haslam publicly admitted it wasn't his call. That's about as damning as it gets. Your rookie star arriving without unified support from the people who are supposed to shape his career. For Sanders, the optics were brutal. Every press feature, every broadcast graphic in the weeks leading up to the draft positioned him as potentially the guy. Yet the Browns treated him more like an insurance policy, buried behind easier, safer choices like Flacco and Gabriel. And you can tell when a franchise really believes in their pick. They hand the kid the keys, or at the very least, show conviction. Cleveland did the opposite. They hesitated, they equivocated. And they reminded fans of the same indecision that has tanked quarterbacks here for decades. Shedeur didn't just fall down the draft board, he fell into dysfunction. And from the very beginning, that disrespect set the stage for his current predicament, hyped up to the public, doubted inside the building. If there's one thing the Browns do better than most franchises, it's turning the quarterback position into a graveyard. From Tim Couch to Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield to Deshaun Watson's roller coaster tenure, Cleveland has been consistently consistent at one thing: getting it wrong under center. And the second Shedeur Sanders walked into the building, it looked like history was gearing up to repeat itself. Instead of being positioned as the bright, marketable rookie to groom for the future, Sanders was immediately lost in the shuffle. Joe Flacco, the veteran Super Bowl winner on the tail end of his career, was anointed the safest option. Rookie Dillon Gabriel, drafted ahead of Sanders, was fast-tracked into the QB2 role. That left Sanders buried as QB3, taking practice scraps and holding the clipboard while the offense sputtered. If there's one thing the Browns do better than most franchises, it's turning the quarterback position into a graveyard. From Tim Couch to Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield to Deshaun Watson's roller coaster tenure, Cleveland has been consistently consistent at one thing: getting it wrong under center. And the second Shedeur Sanders walked into the building, it looked like history was gearing up to repeat itself. Instead of being positioned as the bright, marketable rookie to groom for the future, Sanders was immediately lost in the shuffle. Joe Flacco, the veteran Super Bowl winner on the tail end of his career, was anointed the safest option. Rookie Dylan Gabriel, drafted ahead of Sanders, was fast-tracked into the QB2 role. That left Sanders buried as QB3, taking practice scraps and holding the clipboard while the offense sputtered. For a rookie quarterback, development isn't just about film study and weight room hours. It's about meaningful reps. And the Browns essentially pushed Sanders into quarterback purgatory, where you're too valuable to cut, but not trusted enough to play. His teammates noticed, the media noticed, and fans who had been promised a new era felt duped before the season even started. The irony is brutal. The Browns' own marketing department leaned heavily on Sanders, splashing him across promos and teasing a future face of the franchise. Yet the coaching staff treated him as though he were a project to stash away. Fans chanting his name from the stands weren't just calling for entertainment. They were demanding a glimpse of the player Cleveland insisted was worth drafting. And that's where the disconnect becomes dangerous. Coaches see patience as strategy. Players see it as wasted opportunity. Fans see it as betrayal. And for Sanders, every wasted snap behind quarterbacks with limited ceilings feels like another reminder. In Cleveland, the quarterback carousel spins forever, and everyone eventually gets tossed. It's one thing for fans to chant a rookie's name from the stands. That happens everywhere, every season. But when the voices inside the locker room begin to echo those chants, that's when a coach has a real problem. And Cleveland might be right on the edge of that cliff. Reports from insiders suggest veteran Browns players are growing restless with Kevin Stefanski's refusal to put Shedeur Sanders on the field. These aren't rookies clinging to hype. These are established pros who've endured years of losing and know the difference between empty promise and real spark. And what they've seen in Sanders, even in brief flashes at practice and preseason, has many convinced he's the only one capable of reigniting this offense. One veteran reportedly summed it up bluntly: "If he plays, we win. If he sits, we waste another year." It may sound dramatic, but for players in their prime years, every season counts. Nobody wants to grind through another slog while waiting on a coach's development plan. Meanwhile, the fan base has reached full-blown mutiny mode. Chants of "We want Shedeur" have broken out at stadiums. Social media is plastered with montages of his college highlights. Every laser throw and every celebration replayed like a campaign ad. Hashtags like "Free Shedeur" and "Fire Stefanski" trend nationally whenever the Browns falter. This isn't just emotion, either. Jerseys with Sanders' name outsell nearly every other Brown on the roster. Ticket sales climb whenever fans believe there's a chance he'll see action. That's leverage players and ownership can feel, even if they won't admit it publicly. For Stefanski, patience has quickly turned into the perception of sabotage, and perception is deadly. Once fans think you're blocking the future and players think you're holding back wins, your authority erodes faster than any game clock. What started as murmurs outside the building has become a conversation inside it. Sanders' hype isn't just hype anymore. It's turning into belief. And belief is contagious. If there's one thing Jerry Jones has mastered, it's turning football into theater. He doesn't just own the Dallas Cowboys. He runs America's biggest headline machine. And when whispers started flying that Cleveland might not fully commit to Shedeur Sanders, nobody perked up quicker than Jerry. Think about it. Shedeur is everything Jerry drools over in a quarterback. He's young, charismatic, marketable, and carries one of the most famous names in football history. The Sanders legacy would look tailor-made stitched onto a Cowboys jersey, the kind that would sell out across Texas in hours. To Jerry, that's not just football, that's business, branding, and spectacle rolled into one. Rumors are already swirling that Jones could pounce if the Browns' dysfunction drags on, maybe through a blockbuster trade, maybe through long-term maneuvering in the draft. But the logic is clear. Dak Prescott is steady but not flashy. For a man obsessed with headlines and ratings, Sanders represents the show, and the timing couldn't be juicier. The Browns bury Sanders, fans chant his name, and suddenly, here's Jerry Jones riding in like a sheriff in some Old West movie, hat tilted, ready to pull a rescue mission. It's the kind of storyline the NFL practically scripts itself. Quarterback, imprisoned in Cleveland, gets saved by the biggest showman in the league. Other owners would call it reckless. Jerry would call it destiny. Reuniting the Cowboys brand with the Sanders name brings with it nostalgia, star power, headlines, and dollar signs. Whether Sanders is ready to be a franchise QB tomorrow wouldn't even matter, because to Jones, the story sells just as much as the stats. And in an NFL that thrives on stars, what better star for Dallas than the quarterback Cleveland refuses to unleash? It's easy to dismiss the Shedeur Sanders drama as just another case of Cleveland being, well, Cleveland. But this is bigger than one franchise. The NFL itself has skin in the game, and the way the Browns are handling Sanders is making people across the league grind their teeth. Why? Because Shedeur isn't just a quarterback prospect. He's a content generator, a demographic magnet, and a marketing dream. Networks built preseason promo packages around him before he even stepped onto the field. The NFL plastered him all over future star marketing reels, grouping him with CJ Stroud and Caleb Williams to pitch the league's next wave. Even merchandise reports showed Sanders jerseys outselling Browns veterans before training camp ended. So when Cleveland relegated him to QB3 and buried him behind stopgap options, it didn't just frustrate fans, it rattled the entire NFL machine. Broadcast partners want highlights. Sponsors want stars. Fantasy platforms and sportsbooks crave buzzworthy names that keep people watching even in blowouts. And right now, all of those industries know one thing. Shedeur puts people in seats and eyes on screens. League execs are reportedly baffled at how the Browns managed to turn their most marketable rookie into a human clipboard. Behind closed doors, owners have already started whispering about opportunity, because in this league, one team's dysfunction is another team's jackpot. It's not just Dallas circling either. Multiple franchises that missed on quarterback prospects in recent drafts are quietly watching Cleveland's every move, because they all know what the fans know. If you give Shedeur the stage, he can deliver both performance and profits. That's why this isn't just about wins and losses anymore. The Browns' mishandling of Sanders has transformed into a test case. Proof of what happens when a team underestimates the power of a star in today's NFL. What started as playful whispers has now morphed into genuine speculation. NFL insiders aren't treating Shedeur Sanders' trade talk as fan fiction anymore. They're openly debating it on major platforms. And every time the Browns trot out another bland performance without him, those conversations get louder. The Dallas Cowboys naturally dominate the rumor mill. Jerry Jones has never been shy about making over-the-top moves, and Shedeur fits his profile perfectly. Young, electrifying, marketable. A Sanders and Cowboys blue? It practically writes itself. Analysts have floated blockbuster scenarios where Jones moves on from Dak Prescott or packages draft picks to pull Sanders out of Cleveland, the way he once gambled on Ezekiel Elliott or CeeDee Lamb. For Jerry, this wouldn't just be a football decision. It would be a spectacle, a business play, and a chance to make AT&T Stadium the epicenter of the Shedeur show. But Dallas isn't alone. Other quarterback-needy teams are watching closely. Rumors suggest franchises like the Raiders, Falcons, and even the Giants could be sniffing around if Cleveland shows any willingness to deal. For these teams, Sanders isn't just a gamble. He's hope. He's ticket sales. He's the kind of quarterback who can change a franchise's trajectory and its balance seat overnight. Meanwhile, in Cleveland, every refusal to play him only fuels the perception that they're wasting a generational talent. And in the NFL, that perception quickly turns into opportunity. The league has seen this before. Disgruntled rookies stuck in toxic situations suddenly flipped into stars the moment they land with the right organization. So now, what began as fan muttering has morphed into a very real possibility. The question isn't whether other teams want Shedeur, it's how long Cleveland can realistically hold on before business, locker room pressure, and sheer common sense force them to act. The Cleveland Browns wanted Shedeur Sanders as a safety valve, a developmental piece they could stash away. Instead, they accidentally found themselves holding one of the most marketable, polarizing, and talked about rookies in football. And they clearly don't know what to do with him. From the start, the message out of Cleveland has been fragmented. Ownership admits they didn't push for him. Stefanski acts like he doesn't trust him. And fans are left wondering how a team that hasn't had a stable quarterback in decades can squander the one player who actually feels like the future. And here's the irony. The longer Sanders doesn't play, the bigger he gets. Every highlight clip resurfaces. Every trade rumor gains traction. Every chant from restless fans grows louder. He's becoming less of a developmental project and more of a cultural phenomenon. Meanwhile, the NFL ecosystem isn't waiting around. Networks crave him. Merchandisers love him. Other owners are staring at Cleveland's indecision and seeing opportunity. And then there's Dallas, with Jerry Jones lurking. The Cowboys look like the loudest possible stage for Sanders. If the Browns don't figure it out soon, they may end up watching him ignite someone else's franchise, while they're left with another chapter in their long book of quarterback failures. So, the countdown is on. Either Cleveland finally unleashes Shedeur and gives him the platform the league, the fans, and even his own teammates are begging for, or they cling to old habits and let the pressure boil over into a trade they'll regret for years. Because love him or hate him, one fact is undeniable. Shedeur Sanders isn't going to sit quietly forever. And every week he stays buried on that bench, the clock ticks louder toward the moment he either takes over Cleveland or gets rescued by someone who knows exactly what they're holding.